Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for visiting once again. So, as you can see, slightly unusually, I'm not going to talk about modelling today, but about something else that one or two very kind viewers have expressed a desire to see a little more of. Not very many of you, I might add, so I'm playing to the minority here, unfortunately. But you will have perhaps seen my video peregrinations, shall we call them, from the boundary of various cricket pitches outside, and perhaps you may have considered that this is a game that's restricted only to the summertime in good old Blighty, but it does get played in the UK in the evenings during the course of the winter, where it's played indoors. Now, the indoor cricket game is a little different, and if you're not put off by this by now, then thank you very much for staying with me, but I hope you'll stick around as I attempt an explanation. But just to sort of fill you in on the background of it, it's a smaller game, but it's played with 6 players in a small enclosed space, as you can see here, with the wickets set at either end like this, with a gap all around them, as you can see. Now, it's normally in a sports hall, and you'll know approximately what size a sports hall is, so it will be fairly, I suspect, fairly clear to you. But it's pretty fast. It's quite a frenetic game, and as with outdoor cricket, it's a game of scoring runs and taking wickets, and the side with the most runs wins at the end of the day. So as you'll know, outside you score runs by running between the wickets, and these are the 2 wickets here, and they're set 22 yards apart. Indoors you score runs in one of really 2 ways, by playing the ball from the striker's end. So let's say that here is the bowler. We'll put him here, and he runs in that direction, and here is the batsman, and he bats in that direction. There's another batsman here, and he sits in his crease and he walks down that way, and these 2 people will change places, and you score runs by running between the wicket. But additionally, you can score runs by hitting the ball against one of the walls here. So this wall, the back wall here, and what we call the boundary wall. Now, if you hit a ball into the boundary wall all along the ground, you score 4 runs. If you hit the ball in the air and you hit the boundary wall without bouncing, that's 6 runs. Those are the only places where you can actually score 4s or 6s. But by far the most runs are scored by playing the ball off either one of these walls or this wall at the back here, or from off the ceiling. Now, clearly, if you hit the ball into the ceiling up here someplace, you run the risk of being caught. That's your prerogative to try that if you want, and you score runs like this. So when you hit the ball into the wall, you score 1 run. If at the same time as that these 2 batsmen switch places, that is 2 extra runs. So with each ball that is bowled, if you were to hit the ball only onto these side walls and this back wall here, you have a possibility of scoring 3 runs. So the game now becomes a strategy between the fielding side, who are in the field, and the batting side, who are on the pitch. There are 6 players fielding, so we have a wicket keeper here, and his job is to look after most of what goes on behind. And then we will have 4 other fielders arrayed around the field. And typically, what you will find is that a fielder will be placed here, and a fielder will be placed here, and one will be placed there, and one about there. And these people all patrol various areas. So the batsman has the opportunity to play the ball into various areas and make runs. So we can really judge for the purposes of this particular thing where those runs can be made, and it seems on the surface of it that making runs in an area like here, for example, or here, is really quite difficult, but it can be done. But what I'm going to do is actually look at areas where you can make runs immediately that are really pretty certain in terms of hitting the ball against the wall and running between the wickets, because that's the most profitable way of doing so. And so let's have a look. Back corners are the first places where you can make runs, here and here. If you can play the ball from the bowler into this back corner here, or that back corner there, and then call the non-striker through, you will almost undoubtedly be able to complete a run between the wickets before this fielder or this fielder arrives at this point here. Because what tends to happen, because this is a net side and back wall and net up there, the ball will run into this net near the corner and it will hit this corner here and then hit that corner there and generally stay in this sort of area. And it's the same with this. So the fieldsman has to run into the corner and then turn around and send the ball to the wicket keeper, who will try and take the bails off here, by which time this man has got home. That's two areas there. You may also care to drive the ball to hit it firmly past this fielder here, off this wall and then into this back wall. If you weren't to run, you'd still only make one run by hitting the ball into this area here and then out there, but you miss this fielder. This bounce off, or bank shot you might call it, that's a certain three as well, because the batsman here, even though he has slightly, he's slightly nearer to the ball, he can get home before either the bowler, who is generally about here, or the fielder, who is generally about there, can get to this ball and send it to the stumps. So it's an easy run. It's the same out there and across to there. So those are dead set three runs here, here, here and here. Now's where it starts to get a bit complicated, and the key for this in any indoor game is commitment. If your two batsmen are clever and they can they can run cleverly between the wickets, then it is possible for the batsman to play the ball into this area here and hit the wall on both sides, and the ball, if it's hit gently, will not bounce off significantly, and then make a run, these two players, before this fielder can get to this ball and then send it to the wicket keeper. So this guy is the one who's really, it's his job to run and be really committed. It's his job to hit the ball and then go. But he is running effectively away from the danger. He's running into it. But here's where the advantage comes. This player, the non-striker we call him, can be walking down the track whilst the bowler is bowling the ball, and once the ball has left the bowler's hand, he can start to track down the field here, so that rather than being here, which is 22 yards away, he can actually be maybe here, let's say in this sort of position, and that might be 3 yards further on, so he might only be 19 yards away, but he's moving forwards. So when this guy plays the ball out to here, he will see what is happening. He will look at the attitude of the batsman and how he's holding his bat and how he's pushing the ball, and he will see that there is a run. This guy hits the ball, and before it's here, he's called yes and has started to run. This guy, who has seen this and heard the yes, has now started to run, and he starts to go, and by the time this fielder hits the ball, he is probably here, which means that he's about 3 yards from home. And if he's going at full tilt, by the time the guy picks up the ball, he's actually made it. He's here now. Now, this is why commitment is important. And there are a couple of points to really remember here. One is where runs are possible, and we've seen where they're possible. I've not even looked at 4s and 6s, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The second is that both players must trust in the call, and the third is that everything must be done at the behest, essentially, of this guy if the ball is in front of the wicket, because he's the one with the most to lose. He's the one with the most risk. What that means is this guy has the advantage. As you can see, he's already moving forwards, and he can move from walk to run very quickly. This guy has to move from standing still to running very quickly. So it's his job to make certain that he gets home before this fielder, because this could happen on both sides, can get to the ball and throw it in. And when I talk about angles, it's about what this player can do and how you can defeat the angle here, and we'll start to look at that in a minute. And these are important facets of this particular game. Let's just for now look at 4s and 6s. Again, to repeat, if the batsman hits the ball in the air over the bowler's head and hits the wall full, that's 6. If he hits it all along the ground, that's 4. As you can see, it's actually quite difficult to do that. That is why you won't see this done very often, and you will see the running between the track and between the wickets done much more often. So in this game, it's about running between the wickets. That is what wins and loses the game. And when you think that there are 6 balls in an over and there are 12 overs, that's 72 balls. A score of 72, which is a run a ball, will not win you one of these games. If you were to hit 3 runs off 3 balls out of the over, so half the balls for 3s, you're then making 9 runs times 12, which is 108. You're in a stronger position then. So as you can see, running between the wickets is important. The last time I played this game, I saw 2 games and I saw a 6 and a 4 scored, and all the rest were done in 1s, 2s and 3s. So you can see the importance of running between the wickets. Now, as I say in the title, indoor cricket is about commitment and angles. The commitment we've talked about, which is the trust between these 2 players, there has to be an understanding that we're going to run. So it's very important these 2 people understand. So this guy has command essentially of the situation when the ball is in front of the track, and this guy has to trust this guy that he's going to run, and this guy needs to know that the non-striker is going to run. So it's really important to get this right. So let's look at what I've described as the angles here. So let's look at another pitch. So we've got batter, non-striker, bowler, and let's assume for a minute that we have, I'll put wicket-keeper in there, we have a player who is here, so cover point. We then have a square leg, let's say fielder, that should be slightly back maybe, so fielder, and that's square leg. Then we have a fielder mid-wicket and then a fielder extra cover. So generally these 2 players, and they're fairly key fielders, they're generally your best fielders that will go there, they'll be about 3 yards, maybe 4 yards down from the non-striker's end. So the bowler will come in and they will bowl, hopefully they'll bowl a line of between middle and off. This is off for a right-handed batsman, so the bat is held out here. They'll look to bowl in that line, which means that the ball is probably going to angle into this area here. If the ball goes into the middle stump, then the ball is going to angle out there, but we'll cover off this example for a minute. It's the job of the non-striker to get down here and to be in a position where he is either near to or level with this player at the time that the batsman strikes the ball. When the batsman says yes, this guy then starts to run because he's here, and he starts to go as quickly as he can. If he's level with this player, then he's done what I describe as beating the angle, because he's now in front of where the fielder is. The fielder, remember, has to come in here and he has to pick the ball up, straighten up and get the ball to the wicket keeper. All this guy has to do is run in a straight line. If he stops here and then starts again, he's out, because he gives this guy the time to be able to pick that ball and throw it in. If he runs, he's home, and he's generally home by quite a margin. And this can be the case even if this batsman hits the ball more or less directly at this fielder, because remember, this fielder still has to get the ball in and shy it. Now you would argue, and you might say, well, perhaps this fielder can hit this wicket here, and yes, he can. But think about what he has to do. He's facing this direction, so he has to pick the ball up and then he has to turn around and face in that direction. That is difficult and takes time and gives this guy the chance to get back home. So if he moves to this position, this guy's moving out here. If the batsman that is running here is level with this one fielding here, so ignore that, he's beaten the angle. That means that this fielder isn't going to be able to get that ball in there and shy the stumps down unless he's quite lucky before the batsman gets there. So this is one way of looking at this on the offside. On the leg side, something else comes into play. So the leg side is this side of the batsman, and the non-striking batsman has an even greater advantage here than he has in other situations. So let's look at this now. Let's say the ball is bowled into sort of middle and leg, so this sort of area here. That means the batsman here can play this ball out into this area here. So the ball is here. Batsman thinks gap there, fielder here, I'll call the guy through. Remember, he's down here now, level with the fielder's running in, he's running down. This guy's got to pick this ball up and shy it in. Now, let's look at the angle that this fielder has here to look at the stumps. And it's approximately here. This is a bad drawing, of course. That's the angle, the cone that this fielder has to look at. Now let's look at the line that this batsman must run down. He's running down this line here. Now, at some stage during the course of his run, this batsman is going to run through the line of that fielder's target. That means that this guy is at a huge advantage when he's running down the track, and this line is exacerbated and extended if the ball is out here somewhere, because the line at which the batsman inadvertently blocks these stumps is even bigger. So the non-striker has a huge advantage every single time, which means that, in my view, the non-striker should be absolutely clear about his position, which is that if the batsman, the striker, calls the non-striker through, the non-striker goes as quickly as he can, and he absolutely commits to this. No hesitation. He who hesitates is lost, particularly in indoor cricket, it seems. And this is what makes the game such a challenge. And there are things that fielding sides can do to deal with this. They can shift their fielders further up into this position here, which means that the angle suits them better, but this allows a batting player to be able to push the ball out into that direction, which is clear space. And remember, we said earlier, anything that goes out into here past this fielder, if he's there, that's a certain 3 runs. And the same is true here as well. So if this fielder is placed nearer to the bat, again, there's that option, but the bowler can also field here, and he bowls in and runs away to here. He can possibly field that, but if it goes past both of these guys, it's a certain 3 runs again. Plus, actually out here, it might be 4 if you hit the back wall first, just here. So you can see the advantage for players of running. So when we look at the scoring, I talked about 72 balls, and 1 run per ball is 72. 3 runs per ball. If you scored a 3 with every single ball, first of all you'd be tired, but you'd score 216 runs. What this means is that if you get your running between the wickets right, then scores of 130 to 150 are really not uncommon, and certainly not out of the question. Indoor cricket is a very absorbing game. It's a younger man's game than an old buffer like me, although I do play it from time to time. But if you understand the strategy and the angles, in particular the angles when you're batting, this game becomes much easier. It's not like outdoor cricket at all, really. It shares some rules, but the strategy is really altogether different. But that's the game of indoor cricket. You can probably find it on the internet, and when you do find it on the internet, you'll see quite a lot of people hitting the ball over the top, because that's quite spectacular. But in general, indoor cricket is what they call hit and run, or tip and run. So you hit the ball very gently, so it doesn't go very far, and that's really the way to win the game, is to understand that these 2 batsmen have to run. And that's really their only choice if they want to win the game. But trust and understanding are key in this, as is commitment. So there we go, indoor cricket, angles and commitment. I do hope you liked that. That's a bit different from my usual fare, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much indeed for your time, and leave any comments in the section or in the relevant section, and glad to hear from you. Thanks very much, everyone. Cheers for now. Bye bye.